Right, let's go to that Champions League final. Borussia Dortmund versus Real Madrid right here in London, where we're recording from.
So we're playing our part, aren't we? English clubs, again, are playing their part.
I'd say so. Well, of course, the last time Dortmund played at Wembley in a Champions League final, Pete Donaldson and I were there.
2013, Bayern Munich. Aaron Robin scored. Bayern Munich won.
Yeah, they did. They beat 2-1. Currently, we're still available.
Yeah.
Adidas, if you're listening.
Right. Should we just do about 45 minutes of us trying to get people to get us to get to the final?
I think so.
Yeah.
If that show's not about this, I don't know what it is about, quite frankly. But big team news coming out of Real Madrid is that Thibaut Courtois is expected to play. He's only played 4 times this season after a serious knee injury. I feel very sorry for Andriy Lunin, who's done very well this season.
Yeah,
of course,
really
he's
well.
Deputised, but he's been ill this week as well. If he was to, I don't know, Andy, take a Lemsip or something, do you feel it's a bit harsh, or do we remember that Courtois was man of the match against Liverpool in that 2022 final? I think he's a man for the big occasion.
He was, and he's a big man for big European finals. But bear in mind that he's not even been included in the Belgian squad for the Euros because he's not considered fit enough.
Yeah.
Which is surely going to motivate him more, then, isn't it?
But it's such a weird anachronism, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
I read. Sorry, Jim, to cut in. This is actually an important question before we move on. In Europe, do they drink Lemsip, or is it a different product?
That's a good question. I'm always the picture of health, so I never have to go and get it.
He is very healthy in the end. Yeah.
So,
but I would imagine Andy probably has a Lemsip every now and then of an afternoon anyway.
You see, I always get paracetamol for travel just to be on the safe side, and then when I go and put it in my bag that I travel with, I realise that I've got like 28 packets of paracetamol in there.
That's not good.
Hey,
be careful with that.
Bad.
Yeah, is it not? Especially when you're on a plane, right?
They won't let you buy more than one packet in most shops.
Yeah. If I may wrestle it back to Thibaut Courtois, I was disappointed. I'm sure everybody will be to have a serious conversation about him. He's had 4 games back, hasn't he? He's faced 17 shots and conceded no goals.
Right.
So, like, he really has done everything he could possibly do to sort of earn that place. I do feel sorry for him, but I think that what Ancelotti has said is that he's the best goalkeeper in the world. So, as brilliant as Lunin has been, that's the decision he's made.
And Lunin has been ill this week as well.
Yeah, sure. Which in a way might soften it.
I see what you mean. Yeah. I mean, if you were Lunin, and you would say to Thibaut, I'm pleased you're playing. Obviously, you wouldn't be here if it weren't for me.
Yeah.
Getting us this far,
and then do like a really exaggerated cough to show how ill you are.
And then
that'd be brilliant for team spirit, wouldn't it?
And then he'd point to Hosseler and go, I think that he's got more to do with this than you. But yes, it would be very unlikely that that's going to happen at Real Madrid.
I heard Lunin got ill because he got really upset because Carlo Ancelotti came up to him this week and said, "Why can't you be more like Thibaut Courtois?"
Oh dear. Well, if he does have a cough, then maybe he could take some Lunin tunes. Was that Looney Tune?
What's Looney Tune? It's a cartoon. It's not a.
But tunes are like a sort of cough suite, aren't they?
It's
I love a joke you have to explain.
It's a double pun.
Yeah, look, Jim, right? Taken to the stage many times a stand-up comedian, right? Yeah. That's the level him and I are operating at. Yeah. He got it.
Yeah,
Jim got it, but he didn't laugh.
Can I just say,
no, you don't laugh at other people's material.
It's amazing. Is that what they told you? I think we should unpack that.
And my audience was always stand-up comedians, presumably.
I think we should unpack that because, first of all, that product Tunes hasn't been available since the 90s.
Yeah, but it was once upon a time.
Looney Tunes is a completely different thing to Tunes.
No
one listening is going to know what Tunes are.
Right. Come on. Remember the adverts?
Hall soothers people would get.
All right, well, you work that one in.
Okay, you come back to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yes.
Thibaut Courtois is a very good goalkeeper. A lot of his saves are a stretch.
There you go.
Perhaps that's what Marcus was trying to imply.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim. I appreciate that. Again,
yeah.
Professionals will look after each other, much like Courtois and Lunin. So, but Real Madrid will have a goalkeeper for this final. We can all agree on that.
I can confirm that.
Yeah, and I don't know what kind of analysis other podcasts do, but this is the kind of stuff you find at the Football Ramble. But I do want to talk about Toni Kroos. It will be his final club game because, of course, he's going to be playing for Germany in the Euros, which is annoying. When he said, "Oh, I'm going to come back," I was like, "Oh no, come on,
yeah,
Tony, do the honourable thing."
Got an assist with his first touch, didn't he?
Exactly.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
I think the Euros is probably the only trophy, other than maybe like the Europa League, that Toni Kroos has not won in his career. And you're like, oh yes, there's a mission to be had here.
I think, but we can also all get around the idea and celebrate the fact that Vinicius Junior is not going to be playing in the Euros.
Yes,
because
I can't believe my luck.
He is a frightening player.
Yeah, I can't believe my luck. Brazil's never been in Europe.
No,
even maybe in Pangaea times, but. But Toni Kroos, final game for the club. I like this quote from Eduardo Camavinga, who recently said about him, Tony doesn't say much, but when he does, he kills you. I like that about him.
The really weird thing with this...
Strepsils Guardiola.
There you go.
Strep Guardiola.
Better.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of different quotes doing the rounds about Toni Kroos. All of them were about what a brilliant guy he is.
Yeah.
Apart from Camavinga. So what's going on there?
Yeah, I know what you mean. He's clearly saying that he's just obviously very direct with his chat. I don't know. But Kroos has been, I don't want to do that thing, he's a really underrated player, because I think he's very, very rated, but due to being surrounded by all those other stars and whatnot, Kroos, a bit like Modric really, has been such a mainstay at Real Madrid in the last, however long he's been there. He is an absolutely phenomenal player and one of the best central midfield players of his generation.
Yeah, sure. They've had the ultimate luxury because they're bedding in a midfield that you would expect, injuries notwithstanding, to dominate Europe for the next 10 years in Bellingham, Camavinga, Tchouaméni. Tchouaméni is obviously not available for this. And they've been able to do a really slow handover because Kroos and Modric are still operating at such an incredibly high level. Of course, Modric will be staying there next season, but I think even though they're different in a lot of ways, Kroos and Modric both have this thing that they've always been very clear about, like going out at the top level. Not taking a payday or going off to be the best player in another league. We will go out absolutely at the top level. And this is being as good as you were and then some, isn't it? But if you talk about being underrated or not being underrated, I think you're right. People who know football rate him, of course. But bear in mind, if you go back to the start of him coming to Real Madrid, it's because he wasn't wanted at Bayern anymore. Guardiola said, look, I can't pay everyone. You want 10 million a year and you're not getting it. And that's how he ended up going to Real Madrid, which has basically made his career from being a very good player on the books of Bayern Munich to one of the defining midfield players of his generation.
And he's also a totally modern, versatile midfield player who can basically do everything. There's like no obvious weakness in his game. And I think that's an interesting thing to note, because in modern football, you do need to be able to be very tactically aware, and that involves necessarily playing sometimes in a variety of positions and doing a variety of different tasks. And I think that maybe 20 years ago, the idea that we all had as football fans of a defensive midfielder or a attacking midfielder or a winger or whatever was very well defined. Whereas if you look at the way that Kroos plays and the different positions he can occupy, he's so versatile. And I think that's amazing when you have players around you of the quality that Andy's just mentioned, because it means you can slot in there and just do whatever you need to do. I love the fact that he's going out on top. I love the fact that he's not going for the big payday, as Andy said. And it'll be a fitting end to his career to play on the Champions League final.
I mean, his big payday was Real Madrid, you could argue. But if you're talking about something like the Saudi Pro League,
but the big pay, that's a big payday that comes along with playing at the very top of the game. That's a kind of proper manifestation of just play your football and the money will take care of itself. That's not. He didn't make that decision to go to Real Madrid for the money. The money's obviously part of it, but you understand the point.
Yeah, it's the best option available, isn't it? I think maybe part of the reason that Kroos possibly doesn't have that sort of superstar Galactico status is that I suppose so many players around him at Real Madrid have had that. He's been so consistent. I think the same is sort of true of Modric to a degree as well. And he's one of those players, you often get it with midfielders in particular, where he's the adult, right? He's the grown-up. He's the one taking care of all the little annoying jobs that need to be done and putting out fires and tidying up and just making sure everything's clicking and flowing. And
100%.
so much runs through him. And he's going to be such a miss for people that just enjoy the aesthetics of football, really, because there's a sort of elegance to what he does and a beauty to it.
The dad side of it's quite interesting, because as well as the fact that when he arrived at Real Madrid, he was the defensive midfielder because they didn't have another
It's mad to think of him as a defensive midfielder, though, isn't it?
But the thing is, you look at the size and the gait of him and you think you can't do that, but actually he's so good at receiving the ball under pressure.
His first touch is amazing.
And he's a really great tackler, which is sometimes overlooked. And when you're talking about him being the dad in the room, I had this actually because I've had my children in to the Stack studio with me this week. When you're going, look, we can't be late, hurry up. Kroos does that when he's capable of all this other brilliant stuff, but he's like, fuck this, I'll just deal with this with a set piece. Come on. He does that, doesn't he?
I think one of the best ways in modern football you can judge the quality of a midfield player is that the way they take a touch into space and know where the space is instinctively. And there might be players out there better than Kroos at that, but I can't think of any. He's amazing at that. The way he takes the ball in the half space and the way he can find space instantly, he's just so consistent at that, and that relieves so much pressure off you as a team. And it's also the fact that he's got a calm head as well, which hasn't been mentioned yet.
And it's a funny thing, isn't it?
In a big final, that's important.
How he's someone synonymous with Real Madrid, who would be absolutely brilliant for Barcelona, for any Barcelona team that you can think of.
Yeah, indeed. Well, let's turn our attention to the man who's another German legend, you could say, Marco Reus, because it'll be his last match.
It's a very emotional game, this, for a lot of reasons, isn't it? I mean, obviously you look at Reus.
Because it's at the home of football, Jim.
Because it's the home of football. And we might be there if Adidas buckler ideas up.
We won't be there.
We won't be there, no.
You find your own sports brand.
But Thibaut Courtois coming back is emotional. Obviously, Mats Hummels hasn't made the squad for the Euros. He's gutted about that. There's a lot of energy coming into this game.
I'm not that emotional about Thibaut Courtois going back in goal.
No, I think he will be, though, which is the point I'm making.
True. But Marco Reus' last game for Dortmund, I mean, sometimes people refer to him as one of the most unluckiest men in football in that. His trophy haul is perhaps not as big as it might have been.
2 German Cups.
Exactly. Should have a league title in there, lest we forget.
Yeah, I mean, I do kind of wonder if they'd have won the title on the final day of last season.
Do you think he might have?
If he'd have just left Dortmund then? I mean, we'll never know, will we?
We will never know, but of course he joined Dortmund just after they'd won the league with Klopp.
Again, something that's forgotten because you associate him with Klopp's Dortmund. But he arrived after the league titles just in time to lose the Champions League final, as you say. At
Wembley, of course, as we mentioned earlier. So this could be quite something.
I mean, it's funny, actually, how well he's weathered. You look at both him and Hummels, especially Reus, though, considering the injuries. Like the fact that he's still there, despite all the weather, like a lighthouse almost.
Yeah.
Because I went to see Celtic Legends versus Dortmund Legends last Sunday, and 6 of the team that played in 2013 were playing for the Legends.
Incredible.
And it's weird to think that Hummels and Reus are still there, isn't it?
And Andy, today is his birthday.
Oh.
I mean, if he could go out the day after his birthday, and then I'd imagine, it would be a double celebration for everybody.
Do you reckon Real Madrid would just say, that's fine, it's his birthday, it's his last game?
It's fine.
Let him win.
As one of their legends would say.
Yeah, let him win. Let him win.
I think for this reason, actually, Reus's last game, I want Dortmund to win because they're the underdog and, blah, 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 blah. I'm sure a lot of people want that as well. But for Reus, it would just be incredible for a guy who, it's not just on the trophies, actually, when we're talking about the bad luck. It's injuries in major international tournaments, all sorts. He has been phenomenal throughout his career. He is a Dortmund legend. And he is absolutely loved by those fans. I mean, Andy, he is so...
To an extent. It's actually more complicated than
is
that.
It really?
Yeah, because I think the way he's perceived outside Germany and inside Germany is very different. Because it's funny, when you drill down on him only having those 2 trophies, which is a surprise when you consider the talent and all that sort of stuff. And I've mentioned before, like when they were promoting FIFA a couple of years ago, there was a cardboard cutout of him in my local Sainsbury's. Like, what other player that doesn't play for Real Madrid or Barcelona would that really happen to? And, he's synonymous, as we said, with Klopp's Dortmund. There's a glamour, there's a joy to the way he plays. But actually, some Dortmund fans associate him with like the commodification of their club because of that, really. The fact that, this thing they did around the 2013 final, it's a bit like Liverpool's This Means More. Echte Liebe, true love. It's like, we're the real... That's what it's all about. A lot of German fans kind of despise them for that, actually. And a lot of regular Dortmund fans think, well, actually... I don't like our club being commodified. And also, it's the fact that Reus is a bit like at the end of last season when he was the captain. He gave the captaincy up after they lost the league because there are a few people looking at him and saying, well, you're the captain of a losing team, a team that never gets us over the line, a team that lets us down. And that's really harsh because he's someone playing for his hometown club. And of course, he didn't get picked up by his hometown club the first time. It's a little bit of an Alan Shearer situation. Yeah. He slipped through the youth net and they bought him back for quite a lot of money. And as you say, loads of stuff has not gone right. When he won his first trophy, the DFB Pokal, if you go back and look at the trophies, he's starting the celebrations in the dressing room and he's DJing and singing and all the rest of it. And he's got his big yellow bandage around his knee because he tore his cruciate ligament at half time and he missed the second half of the game. Like everything sort of went wrong for him. But the stuff that he's done, the loyalty that he's shown to the club.
Off the pitch as well, to the city.
Exactly. If you think of
like
during COVID, him and his wife gave like over €500,000 to local businesses to keep them afloat. It's not something that he talks about or that people realise is part of him.
I think it would be phenomenal for him alone if Dortmund won. Of course, I mean they are underdogs. As we all know, he has lots of tattoos, Marco Reus. And he has an Oprah Winfrey quote that says, "The biggest adventure you can take is to live out your dreams."
I can't believe Oprah Winfrey's the first person to ever say that.
No.
Why is that Oprah Winfrey's quote?
Has he got Oprah Winfrey on his arm?
Like, Oprah said it was her quote, that's why.
Right.
But, what I'd like him to have on there,
she invented the concept of dreams.
She did, and I'd like if it was gonna. When I saw that he had an Oprah Winfrey quote on his arm, I was hoping it all over his body. He just had, "You get a car, you get a car, you get a car, you get a car." He just pulls his clothes off, and there's more and more of those tattoos all over his body.
I've got Kilroy tattoo.
That's a great reference.
Kilroy Silk.
Yeah, Robert Kilroy Silk. You remember Kilroy, the show? That was our Oprah.
You see, me and Marcus are kind of in open warfare, actually. He goes for a 90s reference. I'm going to take it back for
Yeah. No, because normally that
Kilroy's big 90s as well.
Yeah.
Oh, I suppose.
Yeah. He's also a shocking piece of work.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Did he found UKIP?
Yeah.
That was what I mean.
Man.
Like, Andy confused me because normally that's the kind of thing we would project on him.
Yeah.
Whereas he's had inked on him.
Yeah, the mask has slipped, isn't it?
It's amazing to have a Kilroy mentioned on the show. That's how I judge a show episode quality.
Bloody hell.
Can I just make a point that the Champions League final tomorrow night will be amazing, of course. And it's an amazing showpiece for all the kind of negativity around how football is these days. The Champions League final is an amazing thing. And I'd like to make a very quick note, if I could, of the quality of the football in the semi-finals. I remember watching, I think it was the first leg between Bayern and Real Madrid. The 2-2 was the first leg, right? And I just remember thinking that this is amazing. Like this is.
I know what you mean.
I wonder whether, because the final can be a cagey affair, because we hope it won't be, and we hope it'll be a great game, but we understand how high the stakes are in a final. The semis, sometimes in one way, is the best experience you get watching. And I felt like that when England played Denmark in the semis and the Euros as well. You still had the final to look forward to, and the final was always going to be cagey and quite nervy, and you're going to be biting your nails. The semi, you can enjoy it a bit more. And I hope the final lives up to how actually all four of the semis were good. I mean, even on the other side.
I think it will be, though, because like both of these teams will seek to defend properly, but are not totally capable of defending properly. So I think that promises quite a lot.
I found it. I remember that I just mentioned Vinicius Junior earlier, but the key moment on that side of the draw for me was when in the first leg Bayern Munich had loads of chances, didn't take them, and then Vinny Junior had that chance and just he's a killer. He just took it.
It was a great opportunity for Bayern.
It was, and Vinicius Junior just takes that chance. On the other side, of course, we remember Darren Fletcher's famous woodwork 6 times chat. Which he would not shut up about, but PSG had a lot of chances, didn't take him. So ultimately, the final may come down to who takes the chances. And I am absolutely astonished, and Andy could possibly fill us in on this briefly. Mats Hummels has been the best defender in the Champions League this season, in my opinion. Yeah. And for him to not be in a German squad, I know they've had their own problems and they've got ideas about how they want to do things, but that to me is actually remarkable. That he's not even in the squad. It's the way I would frame it is, if you were going to make a decision that brave, you better do fucking well. Yeah, because otherwise you were going to look like a clown.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in terms of the quality he's got, there's absolutely no doubt. And I think the fact that he's got older and has learned even better to deal with his relative lack of pace is really impressive. The way he handled Mbappe was amazing, by the way. But something that Archie Rintup, a friend of the show, of course, talks about in an upcoming OTC special. We've got loads of upcoming specials ahead of the Euros. He says it's probably a personality thing. Like Hummels is very outspoken, and I can understand why Julian Nagelsmann doesn't want to create sort of fires.
Nagelsmann was a bit of a little.
Right.
He's a little Poindexter, isn't he, Nagelsmann? He's got a little Poindexter look about him.
You say that. He's really cool. He takes a skateboard to training.
He's not really cool.
But in his mind, he's really cool because he's taking a skateboard to
When
training.
I went to Frühlingsfest in the spring, I wore the lederhosen, of course, for the big kind of beer celebration.
Talking really cool.
Yeah, but the thing was, I was quite self-conscious about it. Then I realised there's a tent full of Germans. You can never be uncool in front of Germans. It's fine. No one's going to notice you. Germany is the most uncool country in the world, and it finally hit me. It's fine. There's no need to be self-conscious. And Julian Nagelsmann very much fits into that for sure. The way Hummels dealt with Mbappe was basically like. And Mbappe's obviously a remarkable player, amazing to watch, and I'm excited to see what he does next season. But it was a bit like a kid of about 12 who's good at football, but the dad is also played a bit himself.
I'm just going to put you in your place.
Yeah, and he's not quite old enough there to get past him.
So like I mean, there's going to be a very interesting parallel with that with Vinicius Junior, obviously. So there's
Vinicius who?
Junior.
There's so much to look forward to in this final as a fixture in particular, because obviously the narratives we've spoken about with Kroos and Royce, and I mean, I am a neutral, but I also sort of want to see Jude Bellingham win a final, right?
Yeah,
I want to see
think
that
you might
he
get
can
some more
deliver.
opportunities for that,
Indeed.
Well,
Well,
I
mean, it'd be nice for that muscle memory to be there, wouldn't it?
It's amazing, Jim, how we've talked about this final for 15 minutes. There's so much to enjoy about it. We haven't even mentioned Jude Bellingham yet. But when you talk about the emotion of the occasion, obviously there are a lot of people who feel emotional about an English player succeeding with an overseas club, playing against his former club, who he really set himself up to be a world superstar with. I think he's not especially emotional about it. They tried to make a big thing about it, didn't they?
Yeah.
After the semi-final and said, and you play in your former club? And he's like, oh yeah, funny that.
I'd love to see him score for Real Madrid, go up to the Borussia Dortmund fans at Wembley and go, oi, behave yourself. Behave yourself.
Yeah.
That would be pure Bellingham. We also need
Where's
to mention...
your wall now?
We also need to mention, we're talking about underrated midfield players, need to mention Marcel Sabitzer as well. He's been amazing. He's a brilliant midfield player. Always perennially underrated in this country, even when he was at Man United, I think.
And a great advert for how you flourish if you leave Old Trafford.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. He is a magnificent midfield player, in my opinion. And he might have a big say in this as well.
I'd love Dortmund to win it.
Yeah, I would.
Most people are expecting Real Madrid to win it, and I think rightly so. But wouldn't it be beautiful?
I mean,
if
Real
they
Madrid
did?
don't really lose finals. I mean, they've won the last 8 Champions League finals. I think you'd have to go back to, was it the 1980s, to find a European Cup / Champions League final that they lost. I mean, they haven't lost since September.
They've only lost once in the league, which is amazing, actually.
Yeah, it's
especially amazing given they've had a lot of big players missing for big chunks of the season as well. It's not like they've had a clear path.
No.
That's right.
It's going to be a great game.
And they've played Man City twice.
Yeah.
And they've still not, they didn't lose to them. So, yeah, but Jude Bellingham, by the way, named La Liga Player of the Season and has been valued at £238 million by CIES Football Observatory.
I'm pretty sure they'd sell him for that, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think what they're going to do is remortgage him and then get Mbappe, right?
The boffins are taking over.
They are.
It's absolute boffs everywhere. The CIES Football Observatory.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Biggest bunch of absolute boffins I've ever heard of.
I know. Well, Bellingham will probably
It makes it sound like they watch games through telescopes.
Bellingham's going to put a
big nerd
through one of
HQ.
the glass panels in that observatory.
Sam Diss from Mundial, I was speaking to him a while back and he was talking about, we were just talking about things we don't like about football anymore. And he was saying that the thing he doesn't like about it is it feels sometimes that it's been taken over by the type of people who do the rules in Dungeons and Dragons. And there's just too much nitpicking going on. And I agree with him.
Yeah. I'd rather them, though, than the people who actually do run football.
Exactly.
More on which later.
Yeah, indeed. All right, coming up in the second half, we have, Jim, problems with the Club World Cup, Vincent Kompany to Bayern Munich, and José Mourinho's back in business. See you in a moment.
Music plays a big part in our extended sports sound. The Inverness Cali Thistle manager Duncan Ferguson is in charge of that this evening. Here is his first choice.
Hi, it's Duncan Ferguson here. My first choice is by Johnny Cash, which is Folsom Prison Blues. In the song, the guy shot a man in Reno. I just happened to bump into a guy in Ibrox. So this song always reminds me of that time I spent away.
Welcome back to the Football Ramble, everybody. Everything that man does is terrifying. Yeah. Of course, we've had a big European final this week already. It was the UEFA Conference League final. It's interesting how UEFA do it. They don't do them in sort of order of, I suppose, quality, if you like. So
Don't do it like a card.
Yeah, the Europa
Don't
League.
do them all on the same night.
They should build up to it and do it. Europa Conference League final Thursday, Europa League final Friday, and then Champions League final.
I mean,
Saturday.
all in the same event.
That would be logistically tricky, wouldn't it?
Same.
They've got a lot of money.
Yeah, it's true. They have.
Tickets to that would cost even more money. I'd imagine.
I mean, what you're describing, Jim, would get exported to Doha.
Yeah,
Oh, Saudi. It'd be Saudi.
I
Yeah.
retract that.
Yeah. Remember the Champions League final used to be on a Wednesday night, didn't it?
Yeah,
They
many
moved it to Saturday,
many
didn't
moons ago.
It was amazing because they did that for a massive money grab because more people would travel and more people would watch. And they said I remember the reason they said they did it is because so more children could stay up and watch it.
That's nice.
Yeah.
But the best thing about it being on a Wednesday was you could talk about it in school the next day.
That's true.
And lots of kids don't have that now.
No,
No, that's one of the many reasons.
Yeah, I remember talking to my schoolmates after the very first European Cup final in the 1950s. Yeah.
Oh,
That was a great day.
You're a big Di Stefano guy, weren't you?
Yeah.
Before you went off down the Hovis mines in the evening.
well, the Conference League final finished Olympiacos 1, Fiorentina 0.
What a game!
Yeah.
Really?
It's one of the worst games I've ever seen.
Certainly a game.
Yeah, the quality wasn't particularly high. Although El Kaabi's winning goal was a lovely one.
Brilliant, amazing bit of forward play.
Yeah, it was.
Used the defender as a shield. Very
Uh-huh.
sneaky.
It was very, because when it went in, I thought, oh, did it come off the defenders or what happened there? No. Beautiful diving header.
Do you need a shield when you've been that little involved in the game? I think that was his plan, really, wasn't it, El Kaabi? Everyone at the start was going, this is the guy to keep all eyes on. And he thought, well, I'll tell you what, if I touch the ball 4 times in the first half, maybe they'll forget about me and I'll be able to find some space later in the game.
Okay,
I'll find
the
a
Erling
hiding place.
The Erling Haaland.
Yeah.
He robbed us of penalties, though.
He did. He's had a remarkable season in Europe, El Kaabi. He's played 19 games in Europe this season and scored 16 goals. And nothing has made him more likely to sign for West Ham than that winner in the final.
Absolutely.
He should have just pulled his shirt off
Yeah,
and a West Ham shirt underneath.
I'll see you later, lads, yeah.
If he doesn't go to West Ham this summer, I'll be very, very surprised.
Yeah, he's definitely that, yeah.
17 million rising to 30 million. He'll score 2 or 3 goals in all competitions his first season, be on loan to a Spanish club by this time next year.
Personally, I was going to say Forest.
Maybe
you
Forest.
you stick with that if you want to.
Yeah.
He's
Disrespectful to Chrissy Wood there.
It is actually,
31 next month. I think that might.
Jim,
Yeah,
don't worry about
those.
that.
Yeah.
Don't worry about that.
Can I just say, earlier this season, I said if I were omnipotent, I would make Greek football a sort of a powerhouse of football. And I think this proves that I am on the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think. Well,
The Conference League has done that for you. So
No,
maybe you created
I
the
think
Conference
I've
League.
done it for the
to
conference.
to stick up for Jim, I think it is further evidence.
It's very underwhelming use of omnipotence.
Well, it's
hang on.
growing gradually. I'm not fully omnipotent yet, but the power is rising.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So less of that from you.
Sorry, yeah. I need to remember who I'm
You
talking
be
to.
careful,
yeah. You might make me stub my toe later.
Well, I mean, the Olympiacos
I'll make
became,
you an inch shorter every time you're rude.
the Olympiacos became the first Greek team to win a European trophy.
Which is a great thing. That's an amazing thing to
Exactly. Yeah.
acknowledge.
So you've got to start somewhere, haven't you,
Yes,
Jim, with
you
your
do.
omnipotency? Now, this is good. I think we can all get behind this because El Kaabi, the much mentioned in this tournament, has been very, very good. He became the first player to score 11 goals in a single UEFA club competition's knockout stage, beating Cristiano Ronaldo's record of 10 in 2017.
Great.
Yes! And he won't be able to take that back.
And he will be annoyed about it.
Indeed he will. But I love it. It's very much in the knockout stage. You know when you, as you said, Andy, the other day, where you sort of invent facts of, well, he's the first player to score 10 goals in the first 7 games of the
Very
season.
strict
and the first
parameters.
9 games of the
Yeah.
season, the first 17 games.
I could
But
imagine.
you can bet Uncle George is getting a phone call right now from Cristiano going, can you get me a Conference League club for next season?
No. Saudi Pro will be wanting to get their team into the Conference League.
I know
That's what'll
how,
happen.
I know how the conversation with Georgie Mendes will be going, and it'll be going the following. So, Cristiano, I've got some bad news. Okay, what is it? You've had your record for scoring the most amount of goals in the UEFA club competitions knockout stage taken away from you. And the first thing Cristiano Ronaldo will say, oh, the silver lining is at least it wasn't Lionel Messi that took it. I've never even heard of El Kaabi.
Indeed.
That's fine. It could be worse.
Do you feel a bit for Fiorentina?
Yeah, 2
Lost the
seasons in a
final,
row.
yeah.
The thing about Fiorentina, I think I'm right in saying for people of our age, is that, we have a special place for them because of the Batistuta thing, and they're a very exciting team.
And the kit colour.
Kit colour, yeah. Rui Costa, sponsored by Nintendo.
And 7-Up.
Hammered Arsenal at Wembley once. Batistuta was
It
brilliant.
was a 1-0 win.
But okay, fine. Batistuta scored a very memorable goal to beat Arsenal at Wembley once.
Yeah.
Fine.
Is that why you love them, Jim?
No, so I was actually going to say, so Jim maybe doesn't necessarily agree, but they've got a special place in the hearts of this generation of football fans. So it's with that heavy heart you do see it happening. But, they've had 2 opportunities to win a trophy and they haven't won it. I mean, it's their own fault.
How many more do they want?
They've arguably been the better team in both of those finals as well.
No, I cannot, in all good conscience, make any team in that game the better team. I just don't think it's right. I think if you come to football new and you hear me say that team was better than that team in that game, I think that's disingenuous.
It is.
Because both teams were fucking awful and we have to accept that.
I wouldn't quite agree with that. I would say it was a conference league final that was very much a conference league final between two teams who played it like a final. They're just really scared to lose it.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't make anything what I've said untrue, does it?
Yeah, but they were the better team. They were the better team, weren't they, Andy? Old Hillary Clinton's PR won the people's vote, didn't they?
Jeremy Corbyn, we won the argument. Yeah.
Anyway, for a thorough
Go back to
roundup,
Kilroy.
for a different political spectrum. For a thorough roundup of the Conference League final, do head over to On the Continent. On this week's main episode, Andy Dotton and David Cartledge chat about what Olympiacos' victory means for Greek football, and there's some chat about Hansi Flick and tomorrow's Champions League final as well. Search On the Continent in your podcast app to subscribe and listen now. Right, gentlemen, let's go to the Club World Cup, because the Premier League and La Liga officials have threatened to boycott FIFA's Club World Cup, which is scheduled to be played in the US, obviously, next summer. Trouble in paradise. This was bound to happen, wasn't it? I mean, the FIFA Club World Cup, we know that this is, it's kind of like, people suggest it's their response to the changing of the Champions League, or even the proposed and now failed Super League. They want to be seen as the big dogs in football. And FIFA and UEFA, there's often sort of a tension between the two, as you could imagine.
You could say.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Every single move that's made is part of the power struggle between UEFA and FIFA.
Yeah,
right.
And actually, in response to being criticised for putting more games on when there are obviously too many games, FIFA they said something like 99% of games are organised by national associations and continental associations, and actually it's nothing to do with us. It's like, you're not helping though, are you? You're really not helping. This isn't not on you because of that.
No.
It's absolutely ridiculous.
It is.
Basically, the argument, if that's the case, then the argument is that 90% of this is happening because of this, so we're going to make it worse, but only by a little bit.
Yeah.
It's basically the argument, which isn't an argument at all.
And it's not a little bit either, is it?
I mean,
No.
I'm actually surprised that the Premier League and La Liga have been so strident on this, and I wonder if other leagues will follow, because we see so often that money talks in football, and I think it will be a money spinner for the clubs involved, and they will have an eye on that. But it's interesting that the leagues themselves are stepping in, because obviously, let's sort of break it down. You go in with three main disadvantages from that tournament, because we don't know how prestigious it's going to be. Maybe it will be treated like a friendly tournament and no one will care. Obviously, you're going to have the tiredness from the tournament itself. The clubs themselves are going to be tied up during a quite important part of the transfer window. And then on top of that, you've got a truncated pre-season when your rivals, who might be quite close to you, but not in that competition, don't have that. So it's just, there's nothing but disadvantages at the moment. And the really important thing, I think, that often gets forgotten when people talk about fatigue in footballers and there being too many games, is that mental rest is really important as well as physical rest. Now, there's a thing in all professional contracts, I believe, that you are supposed to have a minimum of 3 weeks rest after the end of a season. And for the teams that get to the final of this, there's a possibility that threshold will be broken. So it's right up to the limits that have already been imposed.
So for those who are listening who don't know fully what this is, it's a 32-team tournament, basically, essentially identically mimicking how the World Cup used to be in terms of the dates, the amount of teams, the format, etc. I think it's astonishing and actually quite. It's ultimately completely negligent that the organising body that runs football worldwide thinks this is in any way, not even a good idea, an acceptable idea. I saw a graph as part of the presentation. I think I can't remember who it was now, but I guess it was the players' representation in the investigation, whatever it is that's happening with this. I saw a graph put up where the presenter of the information was comparing Vinicius Junior to Ronaldinho and the amount of games they played by a certain age, and by the age that Vinny Junior is now, Ronaldinho played something like 140 games or something like that. Vinicius Junior has already played almost 400 games.
Yeah, I think that's the thing when we're talking about how great Jude Bellingham is. The minutes on the clock is actually terrifying.
18,000, I saw it this morning, which is compared to Rooney and Beckham, who were the examples used, like nowhere near it.
Which is why when we used to say that players would peak in their late 20s.
Yeah.
Well, by the late 20s, they're exhausted now. You know, that's the danger, isn't it? So the peak is maybe early, mid-20s, which is
essentially every single decision, important decision that's made by the governing bodies in football, whether it's the Premier League, the FA, FIFA, UEFA, whatever, they range on the spectrum between quite poor to totally incompetent. And that's why football just needs someone from the outside in saying, look, this is not a fucking great idea. You can't just do more of this and more of this and more of this forever. Whether it's financial, players, clubs, whatever. You can't do it because it's not sustainable.
I guess the thing is, players, as they grow and grow as brands, and we're forever hearing like loose talk, and it is loose talk in my opinion, about, you know, younger people following players rather than clubs, which I think is semi-untrue.
I think there's some evidence of that.
Anyway, yeah. I think the important thing is the players have got a bigger platform, and I think they're starting to realise they've got a bigger platform than ever. And the way that they communicate with their fans through socials, they have that direct connection. They don't need to go through the clubs. They are able to stand up and go, actually, we're not having this. And this is something that the leagues, I think, are realising that they need to respond to. Because as Jim was saying before, when he was making those excellent points, the Premier League coming out and saying something about this is not really so much of a surprise. Because the pressure to create something like this doesn't come from them, and actually really
it harms their product,
the support. You know, there might be a bit of FOMO there, but you're right. It does make a path to actively harming the Premier League and actively harming their product. But with La Liga, of course, their clubs need the money. That's the thing. So they have just gone into this thinking, yeah, this can, and the reason they've bit on this is this can solve loads of our non-Super League existing problems in the short term. But, of course, if the bigger players come out and say that's not the case, and Kylian Mbappe, for example, what he's come out and said about this, and you're looking at someone who, if not the biggest footballer in the world, is pretty close, for him to come out and say, well, okay, if this is going to be the case, we need to look at what our patterns of playing and resting are going to be. There needs to be some sort of collective bargaining agreement like you have with the NBA, which has a much longer holiday, by the way, but has a super intense calendar while it's actually going on. And Antoine Griezmann, who he has obviously exchanged on it a lot, has said, I think he said after a qualifier with Greece that France played in the Euro qualifiers, he said, well, look, it's ridiculous that we didn't have goal line technology in this game. If they're going to make us play every 2.5, 3 days, we need stuff that works. So I think this is interesting because this is where players can not only say, right, this is what we're prepared to put up with in schedule. This is maybe where players start to take greater stakeholdership, I suppose, in how the game actually functions, which I think could be an interesting departure.
And I think one thing off the back of that I would just say is that if it were me advising players, I would try and push for moving into an era now when you're negotiating a contract with a club, you say, yeah, this is the salary demand, these are the bonus money, image rights, all the other stuff that comes along with it. Very complicated these days. But I'd say for that, you get me for X amount of games a year, and you can choose when you want me to play. Like,
that's exactly it.
I'm not doing more than X amount of games a year for that money. And every game you ask me to play above that, if I'm fit, you're paying me more.
I think what the players have to be capable of communicating.
See how many of them sit out this fucking nonsense.
Yes, and I think also what the players have to be capable of communicating, though, is to the public and to the fans.
Yeah,
not in a sense of, because there's still a perception from a lot of fans of you get paid so much more than me, so don't talk to me about mental tiredness or physical tiredness. But what there needs to be an understanding of is ultimately, because of the game, the way the game is run, is that the product is there. It's not that there's a quality of product. It's just an omnipresence of product, really. So I guess it's about the footballers, the biggest players, making understood in as less an obnoxious way as possible that you, the fans, are paying increasing prices through television subscriptions and through money to get into grounds for substandard product. The players are there, but they're not really there.
I expect there's going to be actually quite a lot of people who think, well, what's the problem with this, actually? It sounds like a great idea, because if you strip away the context, it almost sounds like the sort of thing that we talk about hypothetically on the mailbag and on Uncut and things like that, where you think, actually, a tournament setting, a knockout tournament setting, just like the World Cup, with the best club sides in the world who have proven themselves to be the best. Surely that's the best of the best, the elite. That's going to be brilliant to watch. But the context is so important.
Definitely.
It's like FIFA themselves are ignoring the rules of space and time. And not just that, it sounds like they're ignoring Fifth Pro, the Premier League, La Liga. It sounds, from everything I've seen, the people trying to stop this are saying that FIFA are just not communicating with them.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Well, I think that there will be some people listening to this, and a lot of people who are looking at these stories thinking, well, you're looking at this from a European point of view, because with the European clubs, they are. Let's be honest, they'd be favourites to win this tournament, and they would be favourites to win this tournament for how many years, and so on and so forth. That's where the money is. That's where largely the best players are. But actually, the answer to try and rebalance things, if indeed that is possible, which I'm not sure it is, and if indeed it is something that you have to do, is not to basically overwork footballers. You know, you've just mapped it all out there very eloquently, if I may say, chaps. So I understand why some people would be very excited for this tournament. Think, well, actually, hang on, we're the champions of Asia, and you've got some African teams and South American teams, and I think, well, we'd love that. But their fixture lists may not be as intense. They may well be, I don't know. But this idea that, oh well, actually, don't be European elitists. It's not that. This is talking about the physical well-being of football. Is the big argument.
But I think when you look at clubs from South America or whatever, that's maybe a European read on how, say, South Americans might feel about it. Because
I'm guessing with
South Americans, for example, they already really value this competition in its smaller format. So it's not, it's fixing a problem that we might suppose to be there as Europeans who think the game should be more global, but is not actually there.
Yeah, quite possibly, Andy. Well, we should say not everybody based in Europe is against this idea, because PSG president Nasser Al-Khelaifi has called it bigger than the World Cup.
He's a very successful man, but he's a prat, isn't he?
Yeah. If we can't win the Champions League, we'll bloody win that one. and then we'll be the best club in the world.
They won't,
yeah, exactly.
which is great. They won't. Yeah, as long, I think we can all agree.
They were beaten by Central Coast Mariners in the final.
Yeah. very broad church here, lots of different inputs. I think one thing that unites all of us is that the longer Paris Saint-Germain go without winning a major European or world trophy is brilliant.
It's superb, isn't it? Yeah. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the reason why it's not a good idea, because if they think it is, then it clearly isn't. Speaking of good ideas, though, Vincent Kompany has been confirmed as the Bayern Munich manager. He did his best to sound convincing in his press conference. He said, "My mentality is I never haven't worked for a top club."
You could just say, I've always worked for a top club there.
Yeah. The top club is the environment you create. Right. It's the work you do with your staff. The good and bad times define working at a top level. To be here already feels at home. Was he relegated or not with Burnley? I'm sorry.
But so I've got perhaps a slightly different take to some of the people in this room about this.
Go on.
I suspect what's going to happen is what normally happens. I'm going to say what I think, and Andy's going to completely disprove everything I've said. But before I do that,
can't disprove the future.
You were astonished. You were astonished by this happening.
But we mulled it over, and I said,
but you said at the very start when this first, your first take on it was, this cannot be happening. This rumour that's been talked about, they've been linked with Vincent Kompany, has to be like total nonsense.
I felt sorry for Harry Kane.
Ahead of the Euros. Big puncture to his confidence. How many penalties are you going to miss now?
Well, I'm telling you, Harry, win something with England. Because otherwise... But
the reason I'm bringing this up is not to try and make you look bad. It's just to say that this is how far out of left field it appears to have been.
Yeah. It's very left field, yeah.
But my take on it is somewhat different.
Jim had to reference Frank Rijkaard in it.
He did.
That's how left field it was.
Oh, it's nice to hear Frank getting mentioned.
Yeah, it's a lovely Joker card to play, that.
Frank Rijkaard's such a good player.
Yeah.
Anyway, my take is that, actually, I'd love some more input on Andy and how Kompany was when he managed in Belgium, because I obviously didn't see them play that much. But when you look at it in the round and you look that he's obviously played at the top level. He's not just a top level player. He's been known as being like a proper leader, and he's a legend at Man City. And Burnley, I know you're going to laugh at this, Burnley were sensationally good in the Championship.
Oh, yeah.
And the challenge that Bayern Munich face more often than not is far more similar to the challenge that Burnley face in the Championship.
We did mull over this. We mull over this. And the
biggest
playing
dog in the yard.
Yeah,
right?
the playing style and all the rest of it. If you can implement it in one team, then theoretically you can implement it at another side with better players.
Yeah, and then you take into account that basically no one wants the job, and they've been historically bad last season. And a lot of the time, it's about context. A lot of the time, you do see players go into clubs, not just managers, players as well, where you think, from the player's point of view, that's a great move for you getting to Barcelona or whatever, because there's no way when Barcelona were good, you'd be there.
Yeah,
so he's got an opportunity, which I think actually it shouldn't be as dismissed as it's been.
No, sure. Look, when I was shy, it's not like Steve Bruce has gone there. Do you know what I mean? Like I was.
Now you're talking. Now you're fucking talking.
Look, I was very surprised, but when we mulled it over,
I've enjoyed Oktoberfest. Steve, it's May.
Yeah, it's supposed to be another training ground, not cup final.
Anyway, I think that's it.
I've enjoyed the meat. There's meat everywhere.
Away then, pour away. Right.
So the funniest thing for me about the whole kind of dance that Bayern have done to finally get someone in position is, and I think this really went under the radar, how silly and how funny this is. They tried to get Julian Nagelsmann back. Like after they sacked him before the end of a season where they ended up winning the league anyway, and he is the current Germany manager a month before they host the Euros.
And
they've always got an eye on the bigger picture, Bayern.
It's amazing.
They're not as self-absorbed as we might think.
They also found it more difficult than they thought to get rid of Thomas Tuchel because the fans did a petition to get him to stay, which then got leaked publicly.
Yeah. And then they tried to get him to stay and he wouldn't.
Well, because in the days after Thomas Tuchel having it put to him and looking really happy and proud actually about the fans have done a petition. Some fans have done a petition
because they've never met him.
And so Uli Hoeneß came out like a day later and spoke at this seminar and said, "Well, he's rubbish with young players."
Yeah,
and then
undermined him.
After that, they have to go back and try and renegotiate.
What was your favourite part of the Uli Hoeneß quote? Mine was, "This is a collect call from Uli Hoeneß from the Munich Correctional Facility."
Yeah, I may be rubbish with training the kids, but I'm good with taxes, Lily.
Andy, what do you think about the points I made about Company, about how I don't think it's necessarily as bad an appointment? I feel like it's just a bit too early to judge Company.
I think, there's a lot to recommend that point of view, and I think a lot of it is fair because he'll be coaching far better players than he did at Anderlecht and Burnley. B, you do kind of sound like you're working for the Bayern PR office now because that is the way they're.
Well, they do need some good PR. Yeah. I mean, they're having a nightmare.
They certainly do. I think it's not so much him, and that's the good thing from his perspective. It's not so much him; it's the process, which has been completely crazy. Like what Jim was saying before, the Julian Nagelsmann thing. It's remarkable for all those reasons. It's also remarkable in that the most organised club in European football traditionally are running things like a Serie A club. Because what's your first move?
That is a damning indictment.
When you get rid of a coach, we might as well employ this bloke. We're still paying him anyway.
Well, again,
it's a money saver.
The luck of Harry Kane,
almost like that.
No, but I don't think. I think the biggest challenge, and Andy's touched on it, but I alluded to it, but just to put a bit more meat on the bones there, right? The biggest challenge in a club like that will be winning the battle of wills with what is presumably a very strong dressing room with big characters, big players, a historically big club. And Company does have a lot to credit him in that area.
Yeah. That's his natural environment, isn't it?
Yes.
But it's realising that you're the coach at Bayern and not to make those battles, which like Thomas Tuchel is obviously not very good at because he's not good at managing upwards. And especially as they didn't have a sporting director for a huge middle chunk, certainly last summer of when he was there, like he had to get involved, Tuchel, with the transfers and stuff. So they got him more involved than he wanted to. Where really you want the coach at Bayern to just coach. And if you can restrict Company to that, then maybe it works in a certain way.
And I agree, but I'm talking about slightly different things. I think the Thomas Tuchel comparison isn't that much of a good one because Tuchel wasn't really a player. He's known as a coach. Company's at the stage of his career where he's known really as a budding young coach, but a super impressive, big personality player. And that means he will.
You think that counts at Bayern?
I think it counts in terms of how he relates to the players.
I don't think it counts if you're not from Bayern.
But you're talking about managing up. Now listen, you're talking about managing up to the hierarchy, and Tuchel not being able to do it very well. And I'm actually talking about something different. I'm talking about how he relates to the players. Tuchel would have related to the players by being probably a brilliant coach, a brilliant tactician, and impressing them with his coaching ability. I'm not saying company's going to do that or not do that. I'm just saying I think he's got an opportunity to go in and go like this. You may not say this, but thinking this is a shit show. I'm one of you guys. I don't need to intervene too much. Look at what John Terry was saying a couple of weeks ago in that interview he did, talking about Di Matteo winning the Champions League with Chelsea. The question was put to him, like the players won the trophy. He was like, no. You completely misunderstand what happened. Roberto Di Matteo was in charge. We knew he was in charge, but he knew the limitations of what he was doing, and the stuff he did do was really effective because he stayed out the way when he needed to. Company could do that.
I don't think, in terms of personality, that matters at Bayern. You would have to be an beyond enormous personality for that to work at Bayern. But look, I think that the biggest problem for him is that they've got the Champions League final in Munich at the end of the season. That's the biggest problem, that he will be expected to move towards that. So the fact is, they've signed him on. If they get to a point where either they don't qualify from the Champions League group, obviously that would be a doomsday scenario, or they look like they're not a genuine contender for the Champions League at the end of the group stage. The end of the group stage is January, of course. It's not off the table that they've been in at that point. And then, where are they?
Yeah, that's fair.
I hope it's not a Nuno Spurs situation.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think know what you mean.
I think they'll be hoping that as well. Yeah, everyone will be.
Just hope he turns up on a skateboard.
Yeah. Xabi Alonso will be managing in the Bundesliga next season, lest we forget. I tell you what, though, who's going to be managing the Turkish Superliga next season? It's José Mourinho.
Yeah.
José Mourinho. It's Fenerbahce.
Yeah, it's an amazing...
Are you disappointed?
I am disappointed because I want to see him back in the Premier League, although I understand that was always pretty largely unrealistic. But what I do like about this is that he's almost like... It's like Walter White towards the end of Breaking Bad. You think he's got no more moves left to make now. That's him. And he does. Somehow he does.
Fenerbahce.
Oh, he's just run someone over with a car.
Yeah.
Oh, he's found the second wind. And this is massively Jose's like 15th win.
I was about to say, I think we're up to 15th. I mean, people can forget, the big clubs in Turkey are huge, obviously. Massive fan base. Istanbul, incredible city, great place. So it's not that surprising. It would be very, very surprising if he was to find another job in Italy, I think. Yeah. Back in Spain, like, no one's really going to touch him and they don't have the money, do they? Let's be honest. I think that's the crucial bit. Who's got the money?
But what I should say is, before Andy comes in, he obviously knows a lot about Turkish football, is that Andy greeted this news that the same way that a lot of people might greet the news that Donald Trump won the presidency again in November. Are the checks and balances of the league?
He celebrated. He celebrated. And he started shooting his gun in the air.
Is the infrastructure going to be able to stand up to this? Are we going to see the very foundations of Turkish football be able to stand up to this appointment?
I love it.
I mean, they're not particularly strong at the moment.
Exactly.
Anyway,
but Andy, I mean, the rivalries in Turkey are absolutely enormous. And we go back to Souness planting the flag and all that kind of stuff. The last thing that they need on one hand, but absolutely the best thing they need on another hand, is José Mourinho being chucked into the mix.
When you took your left hand out there, it was very much a good for the ramble left hand.
Indeed. But I feel we may talk about Turkish football a little bit more next season.
I feel vindicated that we're going to talk about Turkish football a lot more next season.
My first,
you can't get rid of me now.
No.
It's the first time I've seen a managerial appointment, right, from a well-known manager into a big club and gone, my first instinct was, I hope no one gets hurt. Yeah. I honestly hope no one gets hurt.
Yeah.
What's remarkable is you're talking about the most paranoid coach in modern football going into the most paranoid league in modern football.
Love it.
So, for example, Fenerbahce are coming off a season where they've finished second, so come to the end of next season, they won't have won the league for 11 seasons.
Oh, they need him.
So there's contingent pressure. Well, they need someone who can win them the league. That's for sure. They have just got to an end of a season. They got 99 points and they didn't win the league. They finished behind Galatasaray. And at the last home game of the weekend, where they won 6-0 against Istanbulspor, their fans put out loads of banners saying in English, so the whole world would see it, we are proud of you. We know who the real champions are. Their previous coach, Ismail Kartal, who it's really unfortunate to get sacked actually after getting a 99-point season and getting pretty far in Europe as well.
It's a big.
After they won at Galatasaray in the penultimate game of the season, he said, "Well, we're showing everyone who the real champions are."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Wow, that is like that's a Mourinho-esque quote."
Yeah. And Mourinho hasn't won the league for 10 years next season. 2015 was the last time he won the league, right, with Chelsea.
Yeah.
So it'll be 10 years himself. So, I mean, it could be an amazing redemption
He'd
arc.
fancy a little bit of European glory with Fenerbahce, though, wouldn't he?
I mean, that derby is going to be crazy.
The thing to bear in mind as well with Mourinho is that it's not just a paranoid thing, which I agree with. It's the idea that he seems to be, when he was fueled before about being the anti-Pep Guardiola, what I feel like he's fueled by now, the latter part of his managerial career is just this idea of relevance, right?
Yeah.
He's always talking up, I'm at Roma, but Roma are massive. You know, I'm at Spurs, but we're in London. You know, look at the stadium. He's always talking about his relevancy. So I think he's going to have to fight really hard to remain relevant in the wider European conversation at Fenerbahce. But he will absolutely do everything he can to do it.
But he needs to go somewhere where all eyes turn on him and go, "Oh my goodness, this is better than signing a 30-goal-a-season striker. He's the man." And at Roma, he had that, and he needs that. And he will get that at Fenerbahce. From a Mourinho point of view, it's a very good move.
It's a massive club. It's a massive
Because if he came back to England, everyone would go, "Oh, this guy, you're a busted flush." No. He doesn't want that. He wants to be worshipped.
Because Marcus, it's a massive club.
It is,
but he can still bend it to his will.
Oh, completely.
And the reason it didn't work at United and Real Madrid and those kind of places is because he couldn't bend the club to its will.
Yeah.
His will. It's too big.
Him and Erdogan in one country. From one despot leader to another.
Yeah.
Well, of course, they're owned by the richest man in Turkey, Ali Koç, as well.
Right, there we go.
Yeah.
Oh, he's rubbing his hands together with that.
There's a transfer budget.
Cherry on top, that, isn't it? Yeah.
Right, let's finish with this. Now, last week we spoke about that Dutch referee who celebrated with the team he just officiated, who just won the league after the referee had added 15 minutes to that match, in which time they scored, and he sent off 3 opposition players.
Nothing to see here. Move on.
Exactly.
That's our most watched social media clip of the season, by the way. 2.5 million people watched it on Instagram.
Yeah, all of the police machine squad did. Thinking that's not. Well, we got something quite similar. We do have to go down to the Hungarian under-14s league for it.
We're not above that. That's fine. José Mourinho got a new job there, is he?
Exactly, yeah. On the final day of the season, a side called Kerekejhazi needed to win by 42 goals to take the title. So it's done. It's done, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. In the Premier League, Luton were playing Fulham on the last day. Then it was a 12-goal swing, and obviously, result Forest needed to lose and they needed to win. Everyone's like, as good as down. Yeah. See you later, fine. Yeah. 42 goals. They won 43-1.
The one is the most suspicious thing about it.
Indeed it is.
Isn't it? Let's not make this look like it's fixed.
Yeah. They went a goal down as well.
Yeah. No, they've clearly they're about 31 goals to the good or something like that. Hang on. No, this is going to... Right, give him a goal. That means we need 43 now. Okay, fine.
It is a bit Alan Partridge. Can I have your second least expensive bottle of wine?
Oh, my goodness. Unsurprisingly, the Hungarian FA have launched an investigation.
Yeah.
A country where one might say lots of suspicious things happen and so on, but an investigation is launched. And we'll see. Talking of despot leaders, we'll see what Orban wants to do, and then they'll go from there.
I'm very much someone who you know me. I'm a stickler for the rules.
Indeed, you are.
I don't know if this needs an investigation. I think all the salient facts have been covered by you in this story.
I think you can just listen to this podcast and you'll have everything you need.
Imagine that in court, right? So what was the final at 43-1? Guilty.
An investigation suggests there is a chance, however small, that this happened naturally. And I don't think
all right, how are you going to prove
that?
that? Right, we're going to put a load of monkeys and typewriters in the room, and if we see any of Billy Shakespeare's stuff, then
if I was the prosecuting barrister, every single thing that came up, I would just say, they scored 43 goals in a game of football. So what else would you like me to say?
Exactly, yeah.
Cheers for watching another fantastic clip from the Football Ramble podcast. Make sure you click like on this video and subscribe to the channel, which means you will not miss a single upload.